Hello students, welcome back. In the last video, we gained knowledge about mutations. Mutation causes change in the gene of a DNA. Most of the mutations are harmless. However, if parents carry a mutated gene in their gametes, it can be inherited to the child. The child will have this mutated gene in most of the cells of his body throughout his lifetime. Mutated genes can be associated with various disorders. Such a trait or an abnormality can be inherited to several generations. By analyzing the generations of a family, we can trace the inheritance of an abnormality. Such analysis of traits in several generations of a family is called the pedigree analysis. Let's first be familiar with some symbols used in pedigree analysis. A square represents a male, circle one is a female. This one shows that the sex is not specified. If these symbols are shaded, it means that they represent affected individuals. If a single line joins the male and female, it symbolizes mating between them or marriage between them. If there are two lines connecting male and female, that means the mating happened between two closely related individuals or cousins. Here the parents are shown above and they have two children, one girl and one boy. Here the parents are unaffected, but they have a male child who is affected with the disease. This one shows the number of individuals unaffected. Genetic diseases can be inherited in three ways: autosomal inheritance, X-linked inheritance, and Y-linked inheritance. Autosomal inheritance can be of two types: autosomal dominant and autosomal recessive. There are two types of X-linked inheritance: X-linked dominant and X-linked recessive. Let's understand the autosomal dominant inheritance through one example. Here, one heterozygous female is there with one dominant defected allele, that is a capital A, and one male with homozygous unaffected alleles. Take a look at this pedigree. They have 4 children. Here 2 kids, one male and one female. They are affected as they have the defected dominant alleles. But the other 2 children, both female and male, are unaffected as they do not possess a defected dominant allele. The unaffected man married an unaffected woman, resulting in their children also being unaffected. This affected woman married a normal man. Although the affected woman is married to an unaffected individual, one of their children is still affected because the problem lies with a dominant allele. That means there will be no skipping of generations. There will always be individuals in every generation who are profoundly affected. Here in this generation, there are kids affected, and in this generation also, there are kids affected. The affected parents will have affected children and unaffected children. These children are unaffected by the disease. A person affected by an autosomal dominant disorder has a 50% chance of passing the altered gene to each child. The chance that a child will not inherit the altered gene is also 50%. If you are given a pedigree chart and asked to determine whether it exhibits autosomal dominance or recessiveness, carefully examine whether the disease is inherited by every generation. This will provide valuable insights into the nature of the genetic trait. If the disease affects both males and females without skipping generations, it will be autosomal dominant. Children are affected here regardless of their gender. Example of autosomal dominant disease are Huntington disease, where the nerve cells in the brain break down over time, and Marfan syndrome, which affects the connective tissue. Now let's learn about autosomal recessive inheritance. As we know, an individual should have 2 copies of a defected or abnormal gene to have a recessive disorder. In this pedigree chart, we can see the father and mother are carriers as they carry one defected recessive allele. The small a is defected in both of them, but they are not affected with the disease. Out of the 5 children they have, 2 are affected. Here this boy and this girl, they are affected. One child is normal and others are carriers. This one and this one, they are carriers. This carrier girl married to a normal man, and in their children, one is a carrier and 2 are normal. If this carrier boy marries another carrier girl, their child will be at a risk of being affected. In a single generation, some individuals may be affected, whereas in the next generation, they may be unaffected. Here you can see in this generation, kids are affected. Both of them are affected with the disease. But even though this girl is a carrier, in this generation, in the second generation, no one is affected. But in the third generation, one child is affected. The disease resurfaces once again in the subsequent generation. That means there is a skipping of generation. Here it is there, here not, and here it is there. If you see this kind of skipping of generation regardless of the gender of children, that pedigree shows autosomal recessive pattern. Examples are cystic fibrosis affects the lungs and the digestive system, and sickle cell anemia where the RBCs turn to sickle shaped. Now let's learn about the X-linked dominant inheritance. Here, mother has 2 X chromosomes and the gametes have either one of them. Father has X and Y chromosomes and the gametes contain either X or Y. Here the mother has normal genes, but the father has a defected gene. The gene that is defective in father will be inherited by his daughters as they receive 1 X chromosome from father and 1 X chromosome from mother. Consequently, these daughters will be impacted by the defect, but the sons, they will be unaffected. Hence, the disease is passed on to daughters from father. Example, fragile X syndrome causes mild to severe intellectual disability. Moving on to X-linked recessive inheritance. Here you can see a carrier mother with 1 copy of a defected recessive gene and a normal father. The mother produces 2 types of gametes, one with a normal gene and one with defected. The father produces both X and Y gametes. 1 daughter and 1 son of their children are normal. 1 girl is a carrier of 1 copy of the recessive defective gene, but she is not affected by it. However, this particular son has been affected because he inherited a defective gene from his mother. Just 1 defective copy of the X chromosome is all it takes to cause illness in a son. Here there is a 50% chance to have a normal son and daughter, but still there is a 25% chance to have a carrier daughter and an affected son. The disease is inherited from mother to son. This type of inheritance is referred to as X-linked recessive inheritance. Example, hemophilia is a disorder in which blood doesn't clot normally. Now, Y-linked inheritance. There is no confusion in Y-linked inheritance. Here the trait is passed on from father to son as he is the one who gets the Y chromosome from father. In this particular situation, the daughters remain unaffected. Webbed toes is an example of Y-linked inheritance. If you like this video, please share it with your friends. If you have any queries, put it in the comment box. Thank you.